Hello there, and welcome to today's episode. Have you ever walked into a room full of people and felt your heart racing, your palms sweating, and your mind going blank? Or maybe you've declined invitations to social gatherings because the thought of making small talk feels overwhelming. If any of this sounds familiar, you're definitely not alone. Social anxiety affects millions of people worldwide, silently controlling lives and limiting potential. But here's the good news: you're already taking the first step toward change just by listening to this podcast. I'm Dr. Olivia Bennett, and today we're diving deep into understanding social anxiety and exploring powerful strategies to build confidence in any room. Before we begin this journey together, I want you to know something important. Social anxiety is not a character flaw. It's not a sign of weakness. And most importantly, it's not something you have to live with forever. Throughout my years as a psychiatrist specializing in anxiety disorders, I've witnessed countless individuals transform their relationship with social situations, going from avoidance and fear to genuine enjoyment and connection. That transformation is possible for you too, and today's discussion is designed to give you the tools to start making that change. Social anxiety can feel like an invisible barrier between you and the life you want to live. It might prevent you from speaking up in meetings, forming new friendships, advancing in your career, or even enjoying everyday interactions. But imagine for a moment what your life could look like without that barrier. What conversations would you have? What opportunities would you pursue? What relationships might blossom? Today, we're going to work together to start breaking down that barrier, one practical strategy at a time. So, let's begin by understanding what's really happening when social anxiety strikes, examine the mind-body connection behind these feelings, and then explore evidence-based techniques that can help you reclaim your confidence and feel at ease in any social situation. Whether you experience occasional social nervousness or struggle with more persistent social anxiety, this episode is packed with insights and practical tools that can make a real difference in your daily life. Social anxiety is far more common than most people realize. Studies suggest that as many as 12% of adults will experience social anxiety disorder at some point in their lives, while nearly everyone experiences milder forms of social nervousness occasionally. This is actually part of our shared humanity. Our brains are wired to care about how others perceive us because, evolutionarily speaking, social acceptance was critical for survival. When you feel anxious in social situations, your brain is essentially trying to protect you from the perceived threat of social rejection or humiliation. Understanding this can be the first step towards self-compassion and change. So what exactly is social anxiety? At its core, social anxiety involves an intense fear of being judged, negatively evaluated, or rejected in social situations. It goes beyond normal shyness or introversion, though it's often confused with both. While shyness might make someone quiet in social settings, and introversion might mean someone prefers smaller gatherings or alone time to recharge, social anxiety involves significant distress and can lead to avoiding social situations altogether. The experience of social anxiety can vary widely from person to person. For some, it might show up primarily in performance situations, like giving a presentation at work or school. For others, it might be triggered in informal, social gatherings where there's pressure to make conversation. And for some, it can extend to everyday interactions like ordering food at a restaurant or making a phone call. What's fascinating about social anxiety is that it affects both the mind and body in profound ways. When you encounter a situation your brain perceives as socially threatening, it activates your sympathetic nervous system, the part responsible for your fight or flight response. This triggers a cascade of physical symptoms that you might be all too familiar with: rapid heartbeat, shallow breathing, sweating, blushing, trembling, muscle tension, and even nausea or dizziness in some cases. Meanwhile, your mind often becomes flooded with worrisome thoughts. Everyone can tell how nervous I am. I'm going to say something stupid. They'll think I'm boring or awkward, or I don't belong here. These thoughts can quickly spiral, making it difficult to stay present in conversations or enjoy social interactions. You might find yourself planning exactly what to say next instead of listening, or constantly scanning the room for signs that others are judging you. Another hallmark of social anxiety is the tendency to engage in post-event processing, mentally replaying social interactions afterward and focusing on perceived mistakes or awkward moments. This can perpetuate the cycle of anxiety, as these negative reviews become part of how you anticipate future social situations. It's worth noting that social media and our increasingly digital world have created new dimensions of social anxiety for many people. The pressure to present a perfect image online, the fear of missing out as we see others highlight reels, and the anxiety about receiving negative comments or insufficient likes. These are modern manifestations of the same core fears about social judgment and rejection. Before we dive into strategies for managing social anxiety, I think it's helpful to understand some of the factors that might contribute to its development. Research suggests that social anxiety likely stems from a combination of genetic, environmental, and psychological factors. Some people may be born with a more sensitive temperament or a genetic predisposition to anxiety. Studies with twins have shown that anxiety disorders, including social anxiety, can run in families. However, genes are only part of the story. Early life experiences also play a significant role. Growing up with overprotective or highly critical parents, experiencing bullying or social rejection, or witnessing others experiencing social humiliation can all contribute to the development of social anxiety. Traumatic social experiences, particularly during childhood or adolescence when we're forming our social identities, can leave lasting impressions on how we approach social situations. Cultural factors matter too. Some cultures place greater emphasis on social harmony and avoiding embarrassment, which might increase vulnerability to social anxiety. For example, there's a specific type of social anxiety called Taijin Kaiofusho that centers on the fear of offending others rather than being embarrassed oneself, showing how cultural values can shape even our anxieties. The good news in understanding these contributing factors is realizing that regardless of where your social anxiety came from, effective strategies exist to manage and overcome it. Our brains remain remarkably adaptable throughout our lives, a quality known as neuroplasticity, which means we can create new neural pathways and responses to social situations with practice and the right techniques. Now, I'd like to challenge a common misconception about confidence in social situations. Many people believe that confident individuals don't experience anxiety or nervousness. This simply isn't true. What sets confident people apart isn't the absence of anxiety, but rather how they relate to and respond to anxious feelings when they arise. Truly confident people have often learned to recognize anxiety as a normal human experience, to tolerate uncomfortable feelings without being controlled by them, and to act in alignment with their values even when anxiety is present. This perspective shift from, "I need to get rid of anxiety," to "I can feel anxious and still engage meaningfully," is often the first major breakthrough in managing social anxiety effectively. With this understanding as our foundation, let's explore practical strategies that can help you build confidence in any room. I've organized these strategies into several key categories: preparation techniques, in-the-moment tools, cognitive strategies, gradual exposure practices, and lifestyle factors that influence anxiety. By combining approaches from different categories, you can create a comprehensive toolkit tailored to your specific needs. Let's start with preparation techniques, things you can do before entering social situations to set yourself up for success. While it might be tempting to focus all your energy on avoiding anxiety, a more effective approach is to clarify what matters to you about social interactions. Ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be in social settings? What qualities would I like to bring? What would make an interaction meaningful for me beyond just not being anxious? Perhaps you value being a good listener, showing genuine curiosity about others, offering kindness, sharing your authentic perspective, or finding moments of connection and humor. By connecting with these values, you create an internal compass that can guide your actions even when anxiety arises. This shifts your focus from self-monitoring, "Do I seem anxious?" to engagement with others and the present moment. Another helpful preparation strategy is to develop a pre-event routine that calms your nervous system. This might include physical movement to release tension, like going for a short walk or doing some gentle stretching. Deep breathing exercises are particularly effective as they activate your parasympathetic nervous system, counteracting the fight or flight response. Try this simple breathing technique called 4-7-8 breathing. Inhale quietly through your nose for a count of 4, hold your breath for a count of 7, then exhale completely through your mouth for a count of 8, making a whooshing sound. Repeat this cycle 4 times. This pattern helps regulate your breathing and signals to your body that you're safe. Progressive muscle relaxation is another valuable tool for your pre-event routine. Start by tensing and then releasing each muscle group in your body, beginning with your feet and working your way up to your face. As you release each tension, notice the sensation of relaxation spreading through that area. This practice not only reduces physical tension, but also brings your awareness into your body, grounding you in the present moment. For some people, visualization can be a powerful preparation technique. Find a quiet space, close your eyes, and vividly imagine yourself in the upcoming social situation, handling it with ease and alignment with your values. Picture yourself breathing calmly, engaging in conversations that interest you, and responding to any anxious moments with self-compassion. Visualization activates many of the same neural pathways as actually performing the activities, creating a sense of familiarity that can reduce anxiety. Some practical preparation can also ease social anxiety. If you're attending an event where you're worried about making conversation, it can help to prepare a few open-ended questions or topics in advance. This isn't about scripting entire conversations, which can actually increase anxiety when things inevitably go off script, but rather about having some conversation starters in your back pocket, questions that invite others to share about their interests, experiences, or perspectives often work well. What brought you to this event? I've been enjoying Holler Book Show podcast lately. Have you come across anything interesting you'd recommend? What's been keeping you busy these days? For work-related social situations like meetings or presentations, thorough preparation of your content can help reduce anxiety about the substance of what you're sharing, allowing you to focus more on delivery and connection. However, it's important to balance preparation with flexibility. Over-preparing can sometimes increase anxiety if things don't go exactly as planned. Now let's explore tools you can use in the moment when social anxiety arises. One of the most immediate and effective approaches is to shift your focus outward. Social anxiety tends to create intense self-focus. You become hyper-aware of your symptoms, how you might appear to others, and what you're saying or doing. This self-monitoring actually increases anxiety and makes natural engagement more difficult. Instead, try deliberately directing your attention outward to the environment and the people around you. Notice colors, sounds, and objects in the room. Really listen to what others are saying instead of planning your response. Become curious about the people you're interacting with, their expressions, interests, and perspectives. This outward focus not only reduces anxiety, but also makes you a more engaged and present conversation partner. When physical symptoms of anxiety become overwhelming, grounding techniques can help bring you back to the present moment. One simple approach is the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. Identify 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell or like the smell of, and 1 thing you can taste. This engages your senses and pulls your mind away from anxious thoughts. Another in-the-moment strategy is to use subtle physical adjustments to influence your emotional state. Research in embodied cognition shows that our posture and movement affect how we feel. Before entering a social situation, try standing in a confident, open posture for 2 minutes, feet shoulder-width apart, shoulders back, head up. Studies suggest this can actually reduce stress hormones and increase confidence hormones in your bloodstream. During conversations, remember that making eye contact, nodding, and offering affirmative responses like "I see" or "That's interesting" not only makes the other person feel heard, but also helps keep you engaged in the interaction rather than in your anxious thoughts. These small behaviors create a positive feedback loop. As others respond well to you, your anxiety often naturally decreases. If you notice your breathing becoming shallow or rapid due to anxiety, try the square breathing technique. Inhale for a count of 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, and repeat. You can practice this subtly even during conversations. No one will notice you're regulating your breathing. When anxiety spikes during social interactions, it's often triggered or intensified by specific thoughts. This brings us to our next category of strategies: cognitive approaches for managing social anxiety. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is one of the most well-researched and effective treatments for social anxiety, and many of its techniques can be practiced on your own. The first step is becoming aware of your automatic thoughts in social situations. These are the rapid, often negative interpretations that flash through your mind. They think I'm boring. I'm making a fool of myself. Everyone can tell how anxious I am. Just noticing these thoughts without immediately believing them creates space for a different response. Once you've identified these thoughts, you can begin to question and reframe them. Ask yourself, what's the evidence for and against this thought? Am I jumping to conclusions? What would I say to a friend having this thought? What's a more balanced or helpful perspective? For example, the thought, "I always say the wrong thing," might be reframed as, "Sometimes conversations flow better than others." Most people are forgiving of social missteps because they make them too. A particularly helpful cognitive strategy is to challenge what psychologists call mind reading. The assumption that you know what others are thinking about you. The truth is, most people are much more focused on their own thoughts, feelings, and concerns than they are on judging you. And even if someone does judge you negatively, that's much more a reflection of them than it is of you. Another common cognitive distortion in social anxiety is catastrophizing, imagining the worst possible social outcomes and treating them as likely or certain. If you catch yourself thinking, "If I show any signs of anxiety, it will be completely humiliating and everyone will lose respect for me," try generating more realistic possibilities. Even if someone notices I'm nervous, they might find it relatable or not think much of it at all. It can also be helpful to examine your underlying beliefs about social situations. Do you believe you need everyone to like you? That any sign of imperfection is unacceptable? That you're responsible for keeping every conversation interesting? These perfectionist standards create enormous pressure. Consider adopting more self-compassionate beliefs. It's normal not to connect with everyone. Being authentically myself matters more than being perfect. Conversations are a shared responsibility. For many people with social anxiety, the fear of blushing, sweating, or trembling becomes a source of anxiety in itself, what psychologists call fear of fear. If this resonates with you, a powerful cognitive shift is to accept and even welcome these physical sensations rather than fighting them. You might say to yourself, "I notice I'm feeling warm and my heart is beating quickly. That's my body's natural response to social situations that feel important to me. It's okay. I can feel these sensations and still engage in this conversation." This accepting stance reduces what researchers call secondary anxiety, the additional layer of distress that comes from judging and resisting your anxiety symptoms. Many people find that when they stop fighting physical symptoms, the symptoms themselves become less intense and distracting. The strategies we've discussed so far can significantly reduce social anxiety, but ultimately, the most powerful way to build lasting confidence is through gradual exposure to social situations. Exposure works because it gives your nervous system the opportunity to learn through experience that what you fear isn't as dangerous as it seems, and that you can handle discomfort when it arises. The key to effective exposure is approaching it gradually, starting with situations that trigger mild anxiety and working your way up to more challenging scenarios. This creates a series of success experiences that build confidence over time. Let me walk you through how to create your own exposure hierarchy. First, make a list of social situations that trigger anxiety for you, ranging from mildly uncomfortable to extremely challenging. Rate each situation on a scale from 0 to 100 based on how much anxiety it would cause. For example, texting a friend might be a 10, calling them on the phone might be a 30, having coffee on one might be a 45, introducing yourself to someone new at a small gathering might be a 60, asking a question in a meeting might be a 75, and giving a presentation to a large group might be a 95. Start with situations in the 30-40 range, challenging enough to create some anxiety but manageable enough that you're likely to succeed. Before each exposure exercise, Set a specific, achievable goal that doesn't depend on controlling your anxiety or others' responses. For example, I will call my friend and talk for 5 minutes, rather than I will call my friend without feeling anxious, or I will make my friend think I'm interesting. During the exposure, fully engage rather than using safety behaviors like rehearsing what you'll say, speaking very quickly to get it over with, or avoiding eye contact. These safety behaviors might reduce anxiety in the short term, but prevent you from fully learning that you can handle the situation without them. After each exposure, reflect on what went well, what you learned, and how you might apply that learning to future situations. Give yourself genuine credit for your courage in facing something difficult, regardless of how perfectly it went. Remember that the goal of exposure isn't to eliminate anxiety, but to build your confidence in handling it when it arises. As you successfully navigate situations at one level of your hierarchy, gradually move up to more challenging scenarios. This might take weeks or months, and that's perfectly okay. Sustainable change often happens slowly through consistent practice over time. If possible, try to practice exposures regularly, ideally several times a week. Frequency helps your brain consolidate new learning more effectively than occasional, spread out practice. You might designate certain days of the week as your social courage days when you deliberately seek out opportunities for growth-promoting exposures. While working through your exposure hierarchy independently can be very effective, don't hesitate to seek support from a therapist trained in CBT or acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, for social anxiety. A skilled therapist can help you design and implement an exposure plan tailored to your specific needs and provide guidance when challenges arise. In addition to the targeted strategies we've discussed, certain lifestyle factors can significantly influence your overall anxiety levels and resilience in social situations. Taking care of your physical and mental well-being creates a stronger foundation for managing social anxiety effectively. Regular physical exercise has been shown to reduce anxiety sensitivity and improve mood through several mechanisms. Exercise releases endorphins, natural mood elevators, and reduces levels of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. It also improves sleep quality, which is crucial for emotional regulation. Even modest amounts of movement, like a 20-minute walk several times a week, can make a noticeable difference in how you experience anxiety. Speaking of sleep, prioritizing good sleep hygiene can substantially impact anxiety levels. Social anxiety often feels more intense when you're sleep deprived, as fatigue impairs your brain's ability to regulate emotions and puts your nervous system on high alert. Try to maintain a consistent sleep schedule. Create a relaxing bedtime routine, limit screen time before bed, and make your sleep environment as comfortable as possible. Your diet can also influence anxiety. While food isn't a cure for social anxiety, certain patterns may help reduce overall stress levels. Limiting caffeine and alcohol is particularly important. Caffeine is a stimulant that can mimic or amplify anxiety symptoms like increased heart rate and restlessness. Alcohol might temporarily reduce inhibitions, but it often increases anxiety as it wears off and can interfere with sleep quality. Some people find that reducing sugar and processed foods helps stabilize their mood and energy levels throughout the day. Mindfulness meditation deserves special mention as a practice that can transform your relationship with anxiety over time. Regular mindfulness practice trains your brain to notice thoughts and feelings without automatically reacting to them. This creates space between having an anxious thought and being consumed by it. Even 5 minutes of daily mindfulness can strengthen your ability to stay present in social situations rather than getting swept away by anxious thoughts. Building a strong support system is another crucial aspect of managing social anxiety. This might seem paradoxical. How do you build connections when social interactions themselves are challenging? Start with people you already feel somewhat comfortable with and gradually expand your circle. Be selective about who you share your anxiety struggles with, choosing people who demonstrate empathy and understanding. Consider joining a support group specifically for people with social anxiety. There's something incredibly powerful about connecting with others who truly understand your experience. Many find that the acceptance and understanding they receive in these groups becomes a foundation for building confidence in other social contexts. Now, I'd like to address some common challenges and questions that often arise when working on social anxiety. First, what if you experience panic attacks in social situations? Panic attacks, intense surges of fear accompanied by overwhelming physical symptoms, can be terrifying, especially in public settings. If this happens to you, remember that panic attacks, while extremely uncomfortable, are not dangerous. They typically peak within 10 minutes and then gradually subside. If you feel a panic attack coming on in a social situation, try to stay where you are if possible, rather than leaving immediately. Excuse yourself to a quieter area if needed and focus on slow, deep breathing. Remind yourself this is anxiety, not danger. These sensations will pass. I can feel uncomfortable and still be okay. By staying in the situation and allowing the panic to naturally subside, you teach your nervous system that you can handle these intense feelings. Another common challenge is the use of safety behaviors, subtle avoidance strategies that seem to help in the moment, but actually maintain anxiety in the long run. These might include always bringing a friend to social events, positioning yourself near exits, rehearsing exactly what you'll say, or using alcohol to reduce inhibitions. While it's understandable to rely on these behaviors when anxiety feels overwhelming, gradually reducing them as part of your exposure practice is important for building genuine confidence. What about medication for social anxiety? Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs, and serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors, SNRIs, are commonly prescribed for social anxiety disorder and can be helpful, particularly for those with severe symptoms. Beta blockers are sometimes used to manage physical symptoms like trembling and rapid heartbeat, especially for performance situations. If you're considering medication, consult with a psychiatrist who can help you weigh the potential benefits and side effects based on your specific situation. Remember that medication works best when combined with psychological strategies like the ones we've discussed. Let's also talk about how technology intersects with social anxiety in today's world. While social media and digital communication can sometimes feel like safer alternatives to in-person interaction, excessive reliance on these channels can inadvertently reinforce social anxiety by providing an easy avoidance route. Consider using technology intentionally, perhaps as a first step in your exposure hierarchy, texting before calling, calling before meeting in person, while gradually pushing yourself toward more direct forms of social engagement. On the other hand, technology can also be a valuable resource for overcoming social anxiety. Various apps offer guided meditation, cognitive restructuring exercises, and even structured exposure protocols specifically designed for social anxiety. Online therapy platforms make it easier to access professional support from the comfort of your home, and digital communities can provide encouragement and accountability as you work on building social confidence. For those with persistent and severe social anxiety that significantly impairs daily functioning, more intensive treatment approaches might be beneficial. Cognitive behavioral group therapy for social anxiety has shown excellent results, combining the benefits of targeted CBT techniques with in vivo exposure opportunities and peer support. Acceptance and commitment therapies, ACT, is another evidence-based approach that focuses on developing psychological flexibility and taking value-aligned action even in the presence of anxiety. I'd like to share a few real-life examples of how these strategies can come together to create meaningful change. Remember that everyone's journey with social anxiety is unique, and what works best for you may be a personalized combination of different approaches. Consider Maria, a software developer who experienced intense anxiety during team meetings and avoided client presentations entirely. She began with daily mindfulness practice and worked with a therapist to identify the core beliefs driving her anxiety, primarily the idea that she needed to be perfectly articulate or she'd lose professional credibility. Through cognitive restructuring, she developed more balanced perspectives. I have valuable expertise to share even if I don't express it perfectly, and most people are focusing on the content of what I'm saying, not judging my delivery. Maria created an exposure hierarchy, starting with speaking up once during smaller team meetings, then volunteering to present to her immediate colleagues, and eventually working up to client presentations. She practiced acceptance of her physical anxiety symptoms, rather than trying to eliminate them using the mantra, "I can feel nervous and still communicate effectively." Over 6 months of consistent practice, Maria didn't eliminate all anxiety, but she developed a new relationship with it, one where anxiety no longer deterred her from professional opportunities that mattered to her. Then there's James, who had avoided dating for years due to fears of judgment and rejection. He started by examining how this avoidance conflicted with his deep value of building meaningful connection. His first exposure steps involve using dating apps, just creating a profile, then responding to messages, then initiating conversations. As he progressed to video calls and eventually in-person dates, he used preparation strategies like pre-date mindfulness and focusing on being curious about his date rather than trying to make a perfect impression. James experienced setbacks, dates that didn't go well, or moments of intense anxiety, but he practiced self-compassion rather than self-criticism in these moments. He also found that being selectively vulnerable about his nervousness often created more authentic connections rather than the rejection he feared. 2 years into his journey, James still experienced pre-date jitters, but dating had become an enriching part of his life rather than a source of dread. Finally, there's Aisha, a college student who'd always considered herself just extremely shy until she realized her avoidance of social gatherings and class participation was significantly limiting her college experience. She started with lifestyle changes, improving her sleep schedule, cutting back on caffeine, and adding regular walks to her routine. These changes gave her a stronger foundation for tackling her social anxiety directly. Aisha joined a small study group as an early step in her exposure hierarchy, committing to asking at least one question each session. She used cognitive strategies to challenge her fear that others would find her questions stupid, and grounding techniques to manage in the moment anxiety. After gaining confidence in the study group, she progressed to speaking up in larger classes and attending campus social events. A key breakthrough for Aisha came when she realized she could channel her natural empathy toward others who seemed uncomfortable in social settings, focusing on helping them feel included rather than monitoring her own anxiety. This outward focus not only reduced her symptoms, but aligned with her values of kindness and connection. What these stories highlight is that overcoming social anxiety isn't about becoming a different person or developing an extroverted personality. It's about freeing yourself from the constraints that anxiety has placed on your authentic self-expression. Whether you're naturally quiet or outgoing, thoughtful or spontaneous, serious or humorous, social confidence allows you to bring those genuine qualities into your interactions without the veil of fear. As we begin to wrap up today's discussion, I'd like to emphasize that building social confidence is not a linear process. Progress often follows a 2 steps forward, 1 step back pattern with good days and more challenging days along the way. This variability is completely normal and doesn't indicate failure. It's simply part of how lasting change occurs. On more difficult days, showing yourself compassion rather than criticism is crucial. Speak to yourself as you would to a good friend facing similar challenges. Acknowledge the difficulty without judgment. This is a hard day, and that's okay. Social anxiety is challenging, and I'm doing my best to work with it. Self-compassion isn't self-indulgence. Research shows it actually promotes resilience and continued effort toward meaningful goals. Remember, too, that context matters. Your social anxiety might be more pronounced when you're tired, stressed about other life circumstances, or in environments that have been challenging in the past. These fluctuations don't erase your progress. They're opportunities to practice your skills in more demanding conditions, which ultimately builds deeper resilience. I also want to acknowledge that social anxiety can be particularly complex for people who have experienced discrimination, marginalization, or trauma. If you've faced situations where social judgment or exclusion had real consequences for your safety or well-being, your anxiety may have developed as a protective response to genuine threats. In these cases, working with a culturally responsive therapist who understands these dynamics can be especially valuable. For parents listening who are concerned about social anxiety in their children or teens, know that early compassionate intervention can make a tremendous difference. Model healthy social engagement, validate your child's feelings without reinforcing avoidance, Gradually encourage brave social behaviors at a pace that stretches but doesn't overwhelm them, and seek professional support if social anxiety is significantly impacting their functioning or happiness. As we close today's episode, I want to leave you with this thought: social anxiety may have been part of your story up until now, but it doesn't have to define your future. Each time you face a feared situation, challenge a negative thought, practice a coping strategy, or show yourself compassion after a difficult interaction, you're rewriting the narrative, creating new possibilities for connection, expression, and fulfillment. The path towards social confidence isn't about eliminating anxiety entirely or becoming the most outgoing person in every room. It's about developing a new relationship with anxiety, one where it may still visit from time to time, but no longer dictates your choices or diminishes your sense of self-worth. It's about being able to engage fully in the aspects of life that matter to you, bringing your authentic self to your relationships and communities. I want to acknowledge the courage it takes to face social anxiety. Every step toward greater social confidence requires bravery, the willingness to feel uncomfortable for the sake of living more fully. That courage deserves recognition, especially because it's often invisible to others. So let me be one voice affirming your efforts matter, your progress is significant, and your journey towards social confidence is profoundly worthwhile. Thank you for joining me today for this exploration of social anxiety and the path toward greater confidence. If you found this episode helpful, I'd be grateful if you'd consider subscribing to our channel, giving this video a thumbs up, or sharing it with someone who might benefit from these strategies. Your engagement helps these resources reach more people who might be struggling with similar challenges. I'd also love to hear your thoughts, experiences, or questions in the comments section below. What strategies have helped you manage social anxiety? What situations do you find most challenging? Your insights might be exactly what another viewer needs to hear today. In our next episode, we'll be discussing how to navigate major life transitions with resilience and grace. Until then, remember that each small step toward what matters to you, even when accompanied by anxiety, is a victory worth celebrating. Take good care, and I'll see you next time. Wait, before you go, I'd like to share a practice that has been particularly meaningful for many of my clients working through social anxiety. Take a moment right now to reflect on a recent social interaction where you showed courage, perhaps by speaking up despite feeling nervous, staying present with discomfort rather than avoiding, or showing your authentic self in some small way. Acknowledge that courage, feel the importance of that moment, and let it become part of how you see yourself. These small acts of bravery, recognized and honored, gradually reshape your identity from someone controlled by social anxiety to someone who feels anxiety and acts courageously anyway. This shift in self-perception can be profoundly transformative over time. And now, truly, finally, remember that you're not alone on this journey. Millions of people worldwide are working through similar challenges, often invisibly. There's an unspoken solidarity among all of us learning to move beyond the limitations of anxiety toward lives of deeper connection and authentic expression. You're part of that community now, and your progress contributes to a world where more people feel free to share their genuine voices. Thank you for your presence and attention today. If you've found value in this discussion, please consider subscribing to our channel for more content on mental health and personal growth. Your likes, comments, and shares help these resources reach others who might benefit from them. Until next time, be gentle with yourself as you practice courage, and know that each step matters. Social anxiety thrives in isolation and diminishes in connection, so as challenging as it might feel, reaching out and sharing your experiences, whether with a trusted friend, a therapist, or even in the comments below this video, can be a powerful step in your healing journey. Your voice matters, your presence has value, and the world benefits when you share your unique perspective, even and especially if anxiety has convinced you otherwise. I hope you'll join us for our next episode, where we'll explore strategies for navigating major life transitions with resilience and self-compassion. Until then, remember that growth happens one brave moment at a time, and each of those moments deserves celebration. Take care, everyone. All right, now I'm really wrapping up. Before you continue with your day, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. If this content resonated with you, giving the video a thumbs up helps our channel grow and allows these resources to reach more people who might be struggling with similar challenges. And if you know someone who might benefit from these strategies for managing social anxiety, please consider sharing this video with them. Sometimes the simple act of sharing a helpful resource can open important conversations and connections. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. I truly appreciate you being here, and I look forward to continuing this journey of growth and mental well-being together in future episodes. Until next time, take gentle care of yourself, and remember, you are not defined by your anxiety, but by your courage to face it. See you soon. Understanding social anxiety requires acknowledging its complex manifestations across different contexts. For some, workplace situations trigger the most intense symptoms. Speaking in meetings, giving presentations, or even casual lunch conversations with colleagues can become sources of significant distress. The stakes often feel higher in professional environments where there's concern about career impact, leading to particularly persistent avoidance patterns. For others, social anxiety appears most strongly in dating and romantic contexts. The vulnerability inherent in romantic interest, combined with fear of rejection, creates a perfect storm for anxiety. Many people find themselves caught in a painful cycle, longing for connection while simultaneously avoiding dating opportunities due to overwhelming anxiety about judgment or saying the wrong thing. Educational settings present unique challenges for those with social anxiety. Students might avoid asking questions in class, participating in group projects, or approaching professors during office hours, all behaviors that can significantly impact learning and academic performance. The structured nature of educational environments with their clear evaluation components often intensifies fears of negative judgment. Even casual, everyday interactions can become anxiety-provoking for some. Ordering at restaurants, making small talk with neighbors, answering phone calls from unknown numbers, or navigating customer service interactions, these seemingly simple activities can trigger significant anxiety and avoidance behaviors that limit daily functioning in subtle but pervasive ways. Understanding these context-specific manifestations helps you recognize your own anxiety patterns more clearly and develop targeted strategies for the situations that challenge you most. It also highlights an important truth: social anxiety isn't a one-size-fits-all experience. Its expression is as unique as you are. The intensity and impact of social anxiety also exists on a spectrum. For some, it manifests as occasional nervousness before important social events but doesn't significantly limit participation. For others, it can become so severe that it leads to complete avoidance of whole categories of social interaction, substantially restricting life opportunities and experiences. Most people fall somewhere between these extremes, with anxiety that fluctuates based on the specific situation, their current stress levels, and other factors. What makes social anxiety particularly challenging is its self-reinforcing nature. When you avoid social situations that trigger anxiety, you experience immediate relief, a powerful reward that strengthens that avoidance behavior. However, this avoidance prevents you from gathering evidence that could challenge your fears and build confidence. Each avoided opportunity represents a missed chance to develop social skills and create positive social experiences that could ultimately reduce anxiety. This brings us to an important paradox of social anxiety: the very behaviors that provide short-term reliefs, avoidance, safety behaviors, excessive preparation often maintain or even worsen anxiety in the long run. Breaking this cycle requires a willingness to tolerate short-term discomfort for long-term gain, a challenging but ultimately liberating trade-off. Now I'd like to explore some additional cognitive patterns that often characterize social anxiety, as recognizing these patterns in yourself is the first step toward changing them. One common pattern is what psychologists call post-event processing, or post-mortem analysis, the tendency to mentally replay social interactions afterward, focusing on perceived mistakes or awkward moments while discounting what went well. This mental review process is typically biased toward the negative and often involves magnifying minor social missteps that others likely didn't notice or quickly forgot. Moreover, this rumination reinforces anxiety about future interactions as your mind collects evidence of your social inadequacy. If you recognize this pattern in yourself, try implementing a more balanced review process for every perceived mistake or awkward moment you recall. Challenge yourself to also identify something that went well or a moment of genuine connection. Another common cognitive pattern in social anxiety is overestimating the visibility of your anxiety to others. Research consistently shows that anxiety feels more obvious to the person experiencing it than it actually appears to observers. Your racing heart, sweaty palms, or occasional voice tremor are likely far less noticeable to others than they feel to you. Even when others do notice signs of nervousness, they rarely judge these as harshly as you might fear. Most people respond with empathy rather than criticism to others' vulnerability. Many people with social anxiety also engage in mind reading, assuming they know what others are thinking, typically that others are thinking critically about them. This assumption often goes unquestioned, yet our ability to accurately discern others' thoughts is far more limited than we realize. Next time you catch yourself believing you know exactly what someone else is thinking about you, gently remind yourself that this is an assumption, not a fact, and consider alternative possibilities. A particularly insidious feature of social anxiety is how it can distort your perception during social interactions. When anxiety is high, you become hypervigilant for signs of negative evaluation or rejection, a slight frown, a moment of silence, someone looking away, and may interpret these as confirmation of your worst fears. This selective attention reinforces anxiety by filtering your experience through a threat-focused lens, causing you to miss neutral or positive social cues that might challenge your fears. To counter this perceptual bias, try deliberately looking for signs of acceptance, interest, or connection in your social interactions. Did someone smile, nod, ask a follow-up question, or share something personal with you? These are valuable data points that your anxiety-driven attention system might otherwise filter out. Social anxiety can also involve perfectionistic standards for social performance, believing you need to be consistently engaging, witty, articulate, and interesting to be socially acceptable. These unrealistic expectations create enormous pressure and set you up for perceived failure. Consider whether you apply the same harsh standards to others or whether you accept that they, like all humans, have awkward moments, occasionally struggle to find words, or sometimes tell stories that don't land perfectly. Developing more realistic expectations for yourself might involve acknowledging that perfect social performance isn't possible or necessary, that connection often emerges from authentic vulnerability rather than flawless presentation, and that most meaningful relationships develop over time through many interactions rather than being determined by a single conversation. For many people, social anxiety includes a fundamental fear of rejection or judgment that connects to deeper questions of self-worth and belonging. The anxiety isn't just about the specific social situation, but reflects concerns like, am I fundamentally acceptable? Do I belong here? Am I worthy of others' time and attention? These deeper fears give social anxiety its emotional power and persistence. Addressing these core concerns often involves developing a stronger internal sense of self-worth that doesn't depend entirely on others' responses or approval. This might include practices like self-compassion, meditation, journaling about your intrinsic qualities and values, seeking therapy to heal earlier rejection experiences, or gradually taking small risks to discover that acceptance from others is more available than your fears suggest. It's worth noting that while social anxiety involves fears that feel deeply personal, it's also shaped by broader cultural factors. We live in a society that often equates social ease with competence and success. That increasingly moves interactions online where they can be carefully curated, and that provides fewer natural opportunities for developing social skills through community engagement. Understanding these contextual factors can help reduce self-blame and illuminate how your experience connects to larger social patterns. Now that we've deeply explored the nature and manifestations of social anxiety, let's turn to some additional strategies that can help you build confidence in social situations. We've already discussed preparation techniques, in the moment tools, cognitive strategies, and exposure practices. Now let's add some nuance and expand our toolkit further. When working with social anxiety, timing matters. Rather than trying to implement multiple new strategies simultaneously, consider focusing on one approach at a time until it becomes more natural. You might start with a preparation strategy like values clarification or pre-event breathing exercises, then add in the moment tools like outward attention focus, followed by cognitive work on identifying and reframing anxious thoughts. Remember that progress often involves expanding your window of tolerance for social anxiety rather than eliminating anxiety completely. This means gradually increasing your capacity to function effectively even when some anxiety is present, rather than waiting until you feel completely calm before engaging socially. For particularly challenging social situations, the pre-commitment strategy can be helpful. This involves making a specific commitment in advance, perhaps telling a friend you'll join them at an event, signing up for a speaking opportunity, or scheduling a date. Creating external accountability that makes it harder to avoid the situation when anxiety inevitably arises. Many find it easier to follow through on a pre-commitment than to make the decision to attend in the moment when anxiety is high. Another powerful approach is to deliberately seek out low-stakes opportunities to practice social skills and build confidence. This might include attending meetup groups centered around a shared interest where conversation naturally flows around the activity, volunteering where having a clear role can reduce social pressure, or taking classes where structured interaction is built in. These settings often provide natural scaffolding for social interaction while allowing you to gradually stretch your comfort zone. For those whose social anxiety includes concern about conversation skills, it can help to focus on curiosity as an alternative to performance pressure. Approaching conversations with genuine interest in learning about the other person takes the focus off crafting the perfect response and places it on listening and asking thoughtful questions, skills that actually create more engaging conversations than trying to impress with your own stories or knowledge. Consider too the role of your nervous system in social anxiety. Our autonomic nervous system evolved to keep us safe from physical threats, but in social anxiety, this system activates in response to perceived social threats. Polyvagal theory, developed by Dr. Stephen Porges, helps explain why certain regulation strategies are particularly effective for social anxiety. Activities that engage the vagus nerve, like deep, slow breathing, humming or singing, and face-to-face connection with trusted others, can help shift your nervous system from a threat response state to a socially engaged state. Regular practices that strengthen vagal tone, such as meditation, yoga, or breath work, may help create more flexibility in your nervous system's response to social situations over time. Technology can be both a challenge and a resource when managing social anxiety. While it's important not to use digital communication as complete substitutes for in-person interaction, technology can provide valuable stepping stones. Video calls might be less anxiety-provoking than face-to-face meetings for some, making them a useful intermediate exposure step. Voice messaging apps allow for more spontaneous communication than texting, while providing more time to gather thoughts than phone calls. Various apps specifically designed to support anxiety management can complement your practice. These range from meditation apps that build general emotional regulation skills to specialized apps that guide you through exposure exercises or cognitive restructuring practices for social anxiety. Some even leverage virtual reality technology to provide realistic social simulations for practicing skills in a controlled environment. Social skills training can be a valuable complement to anxiety management strategies, particularly for those who've limited their social interaction for many years. While anxiety reduction makes space for social engagement, you may also benefit from deliberately developing conversation skills, assertiveness, active listening techniques, or nonverbal communication awareness. Books, courses, and therapy groups focused on social skills can provide structured guidance for this learning, For those interested in the neuroscience perspective, understanding how social anxiety affects your brain can sometimes make symptoms feel more manageable. Research suggests that in social anxiety, the amygdala involved in threat detection becomes hyperactive, while prefrontal cortex areas responsible for emotion regulation may show reduced activity. This helps explain why logical reassurance, "there's no reason to be nervous," often fails to reduce anxiety. You're dealing with subcortical brain responses that aren't easily overridden by rational thought alone. The good news is that the brain remains remarkably plastic throughout life. The strategies we've discussed, from cognitive restructuring to exposure to mindfulness, can actually change neural pathways over time, reducing amygdala hyperactivity and strengthening prefrontal regulation networks. This neuroplasticity means that with consistent practice, the brain can learn new, less anxious responses to social situations. Let's also acknowledge some of the unexpected strengths that often accompany social anxiety. Many people with social anxiety develop exceptional perceptiveness about others' emotional states, strong empathy, thoughtful listening skills, and careful consideration before speaking. These qualities can actually enhance relationships once anxiety no longer limits social engagement. The goal of overcoming social anxiety isn't to erase these sensitive qualities, but to express them from a place of choice rather than fear. As you work with social anxiety, it's important to recognize when additional support might be beneficial. Consider seeking professional help if social anxiety significantly impacts your daily functioning, causes intense distress, leads to depression or substance use, or hasn't improved with self-help strategies. Effective treatments include cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, acceptance and commitment therapy, AACT, mindfulness-based approaches, and in some cases, medication. When choosing a therapist, look for someone with specific experience treating social anxiety who creates a safe, non-judgmental environment. Many therapists now offer virtual sessions, which can be especially helpful for those whose anxiety makes it difficult to seek in-person treatment initially. Support groups, both in person and online, provide unique benefits that complement individual work on social anxiety. Sharing experiences with others who truly understand can reduce the isolation that often accompanies social anxiety and provide motivation through witnessing others' progress. Groups also offer natural opportunities to practice social skills in a supportive environment specifically designed for growth. For those who experience social anxiety primarily in specific contexts, such as public speaking, dating, or workplace interactions, targeted resources addressing these particular situations can be valuable additions to your toolkit. Organizations like Toastmasters International provide structured practice for public speaking fears, while dating coaches or classes might offer specialized guidance for romantic social anxiety. Remember that building social confidence is a journey rather than a destination. There may be periods of rapid progress followed by plateaus or even temporary setbacks during particularly stressful life phases. This variability is normal and doesn't indicate failure or permanent regression. The skills you're developing remain with you even during more challenging times, and often the process becomes easier when you've worked through it once and know from experience that change is possible. As we've explored throughout this discussion, overcoming social anxiety involves addressing multiple dimensions: physical sensations, thoughts and beliefs, behaviors, and lifestyle factors. The most effective approach typically combines strategies that target each of these dimensions, creating comprehensive change that's more sustainable than focusing on just one aspect. This might look like using breathing techniques to manage physical symptoms, cognitive restructuring to address anxious thoughts, gradual exposure to change avoidance behaviors, and regular exercise to reduce baseline anxiety levels, all working together as part of your personal confidence building plan. I want to emphasize again that the goal isn't to eliminate anxiety completely. Some degree of social nervousness is part of the normal human experience, but rather to develop a new relationship with anxiety where it no longer significantly limits your choices or diminishes your quality of life. Success means being able to engage fully in the social aspects of life that matter to you, guided by your values rather than your fears. Throughout this journey, self-compassion remains one of your most powerful allies. The inner critic that often accompanies social anxiety would have you believe that harsh self-judgment motivates improvement. But research consistently shows the opposite. Self-compassion actually promotes greater personal growth, resilience, and willingness to face challenges than self-criticism. Treating yourself with the same kindness you would offer a good friend struggling with similar challenges isn't self-indulgence, it's an evidence-based approach to meaningful change. Let me share a few more brief stories that illustrate different paths through social anxiety. Consider Alex, who experienced intense anxiety about dating after a painful rejection. Rather than avoiding dating entirely, Alex started with low-pressure group activities through a hobby meetup where conversations naturally centered around the shared interest. This allowed for gradual comfort with new people without the immediate pressure of romantic evaluation. As Alex's comfort increased, the next step was coffee dates arranged through an app with a commitment to focus on learning about the other person rather than trying to impress them. Alex still experienced anxiety symptoms but practiced accepting their presence rather than fighting them. Over time, dating became less about performance and more about authentic connection, still occasionally anxiety-provoking but no longer overwhelming or avoidance-inducing. Then there's Liam, whose social anxiety focused primarily on speaking up in work meetings. Liam worked with a therapist using a cognitive behavioral approach, identifying core beliefs driving the anxiety particularly. If I say something wrong, everyone will think I'm incompetent, and I need to sound perfectly articulate to be taken seriously. Through both cognitive work and gradual exposure, starting with asking one prepared question in smaller meetings, Liam developed more balanced perspectives and built evidence that colleagues valued his input even when it wasn't perfectly phrased. A key breakthrough came when Liam noticed how little attention he paid to colleagues' occasional verbal stumbles or imperfect articulations, realizing others likely extended the same grace to him. Finally, there's Elena, who experienced severe social anxiety across multiple contexts, coupled with depression from years of isolation. Elena needed more intensive support and worked with both a therapist and psychiatrist, ultimately finding that a combination of medication, therapy, and gradual exposure provided the most effective approach for her situation. A turning point for Elena was joining a supportive therapy group specifically for social anxiety, where she experienced acceptance despite openly sharing her anxiety symptoms, a powerful counter, evidence to her fear that showing vulnerability would lead to rejection. The group also provided regular opportunities for manageable social interaction that gradually expanded her comfort zone. These stories highlight that there's no single right way to address social anxiety. The most effective approach depends on your specific symptoms, situation, and available resources. What they share is a willingness to take small, manageable steps toward change, to practice self-compassion during the process, and to persist despite setbacks or fluctuations in anxiety levels. As we approach the conclusion of our discussion, I want to acknowledge that transforming your relationship with social anxiety takes both courage and time. In a world that often expects quick fixes and overnight transformations, it's important to recognize that sustainable change typically happens gradually, through consistent small steps rather than dramatic leaps. Each time you face a feared situation, instead of avoiding it, question an anxious thought instead of accepting it as truth, or respond to yourself with kindness instead of criticism after a difficult interaction. You're creating new neural pathways that over time become your brain's default response. This process, often described as rewiring, the brain doesn't happen in a day or even a week, but with persistence, these new pathways become stronger and more automatic. If you're just beginning this journey, start where you are, with small steps that stretch but don't overwhelm you. Celebrate each act of courage, knowing that these moments accumulate into significant change over time. If you've been working on social anxiety for a while and feel discouraged by slower than hoped for progress, remember that nonlinear improvement is normal, and that even during plateaus, important neural consolidation is happening beneath the surface. Throughout this process, stay connected to your why, the values and aspirations that make facing social anxiety worthwhile for you. Perhaps it's meaningful connection with others, career opportunities that align with your talents, the freedom to express yourself authentically, or the ability to be fully present in important life moments without anxiety's distraction. Keeping these values at the forefront helps sustain motivation when the work feels challenging. Remember, too, that you don't have to do this alone. Whether through professional support, trusted friends, online communities, or groups specifically focused on social anxiety, connection with others who understand and encourage your journey can provide both practical guidance and emotional sustenance. Many find that the very act of sharing their experience with social anxiety, often feared as something that would lead to judgment, actually creates deeper, more authentic connections. As we conclude today's discussion, I hope you take away not just practical strategies, but also a sense of possibility. Social anxiety may have been part of your story up until now, but it doesn't have to determine your future. With commitment, self-compassion, and the right tools, you can develop a new relationship with social situations, one where anxiety might still occasionally arise, but no longer dictates your choices or diminishes your joy. The path toward greater social confidence is ultimately a path toward greater freedom to engage fully in the aspects of life that matter to you, to express your authentic self, and to connect meaningfully with others. This freedom doesn't come from the complete absence of anxiety, but from the knowledge that you can experience anxiety and still move toward what's important to you, a capacity that, once developed, can transform not just your social life, but your relationship with all of life's challenges. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of social anxiety and the journey toward greater confidence. I hope you've found insights and strategies that resonate with your unique experience and that support your own path toward more comfortable, fulfilling social engagement. If you found value in today's discussion, please consider subscribing to our channel for more content on mental health and personal growth. Your likes, comments, and shares help these resources reach others who might benefit from them. I'd be particularly interested to hear in the comments about strategies that have helped you manage social anxiety or questions you have about implementing the approaches we've discussed. In our next episode, we'll explore how to navigate major life transitions with resilience and grace, another area where many of the skills we've discussed today can be applied in different ways. Until then, remember that each step toward what matters to you, however small it might seem, is a victory worth celebrating. Take good care, and I'll see you next time. Oh, and one final thought before you go: social confidence isn't about becoming someone else. It's about removing the barriers to expressing who you truly are. The world needs your authentic voice, perspective, and presence. As you continue this journey, know that your efforts to move beyond the limitations of anxiety aren't just a personal victory, but a gift to everyone who will benefit from your more free and authentic engagement. That includes not only your immediate circle, but also the broader communities you're part of, which become richer and more diverse when each person feels able to contribute their unique voice and gifts. All right, now I'm truly wrapping up. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and share this video with someone who might benefit from it. Your engagement helps us reach more people with these important mental health resources. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Until next time, be gentle with yourself as you practice courage and know that each step matters. See you in our next episode.